Now, more questions than answers. We're talking about last night's 6 on Your Side investigative report covering the sudden closing of Tip Top Tux. 6 News learned that employees were told via email at 2 in the morning yesterday they were laid off as the company was ceasing operations. Now, last night we shared that couples planning a wedding were left blindsided when they learned of the store's abrupt closure. Well, tonight at 10, we'll hear from one of the store managers who also says she was blindsided.